today by an act of, or two acts of terrorism anyway. Start first with what businesses were in the World Trade Center. We've talked to people before about the number of people in the Trade Center.
Yeah.
And what else has happened?
Peter, it's astounding how much the Twin Towers are part of the life of the financial district. 10% of all the office space in Lower Manhattan is accounted for in those Twin Towers. 155 businesses, 50,000 workers, as you've said before, including some of the major financial firms. Morgan Stanley, the investment bank, has 50 floors in Tower 1. 50 floors, I believe is right. 12.5% of the space in that tower occupied by Morgan Stanley. Several of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, which manage bridges and tunnels, the airports, the harbor, a major tenant, 9% of the space there. Several major insurance firms, Empire Blue Cross, Marsh & McLennan, and among the banks, Deutsche Bank, Bank of America, a couple of big trading firms, Credit Suisse, First Boston, and Oppenheimer Funds, which is a firm that manages several mutual funds. So lots of the big names on Wall Street were in those Twin Towers.
And the markets were closed today.
The markets were closed. Stock markets throughout the country. Trading was halted in some of the foreign markets. The foreign markets reacted very negatively, obviously, to this news, down sharply, and no decision has been made yet as to whether they will be trading on the New York Stock Exchange tomorrow. They need to make decisions in conjunction with federal, state, and local authorities about the safety of trading, about whether the people who work at those exchanges are going to be able to get to work. And I talked to people who were at the New York Stock Exchange this morning, and, they felt the tremors there, and one described it as like an earthquake.
And would you say that in your communications with people in the financial community today, they're afraid of what might happen next?
This is obviously a great blow to confidence at a time when confidence is already very fragile. This was a direct attack on the symbols of, the center of finance in New York City, showing just how vulnerable it is. So I think that, there's concern about how the markets will react, whether anxiety will build. And there's a sense that we want to see a strong showing of U.S. leadership in order to give those markets some calm, so when they do resume trading,
it may seem like an oddball question, but what would be the impact on trading, as in numbers, up, down on the Dow Jones Stock Exchange, of an incident like this, if the United States is seen to be weak or vulnerable, whatever?
Well, as we've said many times before, I mean, markets hate uncertainty, and if the markets are considering the possibility of war, for example, I mean, that would be the sort of thing where you'd see a very sharp negative reaction. So there's an argument to be made that anxiety could build and trading would be very, very negative when it opens. But it depends on what happens in the next couple of days.
Betsy, thanks very much indeed. Betsy Stark giving us a sense, again, of the depth and the breadth of the ramifications, the impact of these attacks this morning on the trade towers and on the Pentagon. I think the addition of the attack on the Pentagon at the very heart of the American military establishment ups the ante in many, many ways. And as we've said many times, we have no idea how many people have died or been injured. And we will do our best to get some handle on that. But we all recognize that it will take time. And I think the mayor of New York put it better than anybody else at the moment. I'm just looking for what he said in my notes when asked if he knew how many people, what the casualties were like. And he said, more than anyone can bear, more than anyone can bear. And I think that's the clear casualty, the dead and the wounded people that we're going to have today. But as Betsy has just made clear in terms of business and in human beings, including, I had no idea that Morgan Stanley had 50 stories of the World Trade Center. These statistics you see that we put up on television from time to time are just the sort of bare, cold background to life and death stories which have taken place today. But the impact of this has gone so far beyond New York City. And just as you look at, that's a live shot of New York City now, a live picture of what's happening down inside that dreadful little rectangle of violence which is hidden behind the glamour and success stories of the buildings to the right and to the left. The Federal Aviation Administration, as you know, has shut all airports nationwide. The Greyhound bus service canceled all of its, the Greyhound bus company canceled all of its services in the Northeast. Amtrak, the railroad, temporarily suspended train service all along the Northeast corridor between Boston and Washington, and the U.S. section of the St. Lawrence Seaway, which is between northern New York State for the most part and Ontario, between the U.S. and the Canadian borders there, has been closed. The tunnels between Detroit and Windsor on the Canadian side of the Detroit River closed to car traffic. And security just went bang up several levels at all U.S. Canadian border crossings, in large measure because there has been a penetration across the U.S.-Canadian border before. One of the ones they caught when an alert agent, as we've said several times today, picked up a guy on his way what he thought to bomb the Seattle Space Needle. Turned out he was really interested in setting off a bomb inside Los Angeles International Airport. The space shuttle operations were halted today. 12,000 employees of the Kennedy Space Center in Florida were actually sent home. And at the Naval Weapons Station in Goose Creek, South Carolina, workers were evacuated and sent there. Again, evacuations and people being sent home from the very heart of the military establishment. Betsy Stark has just told us that all U.S. financial markets were closed. The United Nations building was evacuated here in New York City. General Motors in Detroit gave all 6,000 employees who work in the Renaissance Center, one of those centers built to try to rejuvenate downtown Detroit, were all told to go home today. And the Ford Motor Company closed its world headquarters in Dearborn in Michigan. The IRS in various places closed. The popular skyscrapers were closed and or evacuated in cities all across the country. I think you probably already heard us say, if you've been with us for much of the day, that the New York primary election was canceled here in New York, and Governor Pataki said they'll simply reschedule it when they get another handle on normal life in the days ahead. And tourist attractions, I have a list of tourist attractions. Knott's Berry Farm in California, the Museum of Tolerance, of an attack on Camp David, we now believe, in the aircraft that crashed not far from Johnstown in Pennsylvania, all just had this extraordinary impact all over the world because people feared something else was going to happen and may still fear that something else is going to happen. Just listen to some of what has happened today.
I saw something hit the second tower, and when I saw that, it just was, everything rumbled, and I saw all this fire just shoot out in the sky, and stuff started just falling like it was raining, and I was by myself, and I just ran. I started seeing people they started jumping out of the windows, like the 96th floor. They just started one at a time from different parts of the building. I just started seeing people just drop.
I saw a man walking up the block, and I asked him, he was just covered in soot, and my first question was, did they get a lot of people out? And the look in his eye, he just shook his head. I mean, he was in a daze.
We lost all visibility, and we assisted people getting out. It was very difficult to get out of the police desk area. And then I went back in, and we were carrying an injured person out, myself and about 4 firemen. And unfortunately, that's when the building 2 collapsed. I happened to dive underneath the ESU vehicle, and I'm not sure what happened to the firemen. The vehicle, I was trapped for about 15 minutes under the truck. It just rained building, okay? And I was buried alive for 15 minutes until I scrambled out.